Hi, my name is Jennifer Siciliano, and I'm the host of the Uprising, where we talk to different people about who question or come up with new ideas about society and culture. And today, my guest is Alicia Govan, who's the Executive Director for the Center of Sexual Pleasure and Health.
Yes.
Do you want to?
Yeah, so I'm Alicia Govan, or as my dad likes to say, Govan, and I am the Executive Director at the Center for Sexual Pleasure and Health, also known as the CSPH.
CSPH. It rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
So you are located in Providence, and what do you do? What's your mission?
Yeah, so we aim to create a society where people can access education and information about sexuality without shame or fear. And so we achieve this a few different ways. I like to envision our programming as almost kind of falling into three buckets. We have what we refer to as a personal learning track. So it's information that you are getting and you can apply to the individual. And then we have education that is geared towards professional development. So working with human service providers, social workers, mental health professionals, folks like that. Basically how to provide inclusive and competent care to folks regarding sexuality. And then the third bucket is our mental health program. So we provide sexuality therapy, which can range from individuals and relationships coming in due to discrepancies in desires or having trouble navigating some things in the bedroom, to folks that identify as LGBTQ and just wanting to speak to a mental health professional without having to do education for the first half dozen sessions that they're seeing someone.
I see.
So that's the work we do in a nutshell.
Okay. And so you're a nonprofit, and I know you're located in the, what is it called?
The social enterprise.
Yes,
greenhouse.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And you started in Pawtucket. And how about you, if you tell us about a little bit how it started?
Yeah, so we were founded in 2010. We opened in 2010, I should say. We were founded in 2009, and we were looking to open a drop-in center in Pawtucket. We were, for the past 7 years, we've been in the Grant building in Pawtucket, and we had a space in the front of the building where folks could come in and learn about sexuality, ask questions without the obligation of buying anything. Right. And when our founder, Megan Andiu, sought to open the CSPH, it was also around the time that the legislation around indoor sex work was happening.
Oh, right.
And she had testified in favor of continuing to have sex work happen indoors. Right. And as a result, some local activists in favor of that legislation claimed that we were going to be operating a brothel, and that is what she was trying to open instead of a center to provide education to the public.
Right.
So that's why we didn't actually open in 2009. We opened in 2010.
Because of all the issues.
To the point where the ACLU got involved. And
oh, wow.
So that was a whole ordeal. So we opened in 2010, and since then our programming has really expanded. When we started, we primarily were doing education. And then I would say about 4 years ago was when we brought in the clinical piece, or the mental health piece. And so we've really seen a demand. We actually have a waiting list for clients to see our therapists on staff. So my goal is to eventually grow that program so that we have multiple therapists on staff.
Are they marriage and family therapists or psychologists or?
So we have, so my clinical director is a licensed clinical social worker. And I actually am going to be, my clinical director is stepping down this week at the end of the year.
Okay.
And then I have a new clinical director starting in January, but they both have social work as their primary form of training. We also have a fee-for-service clinician, so she only sees a couple clients and gets paid for those clients. She is a marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
But so far my clinical directors have been social work background.
Okay. I actually visited the Pawtucket store, and I remember they had, I don't know if you want to call them sex toys. Is there another term for that, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's what they are. They are sex toys, but
And it wasn't to buy; it was to explain what they do and like why they would be safe and why other things would not be safe, and the material. I don't know who it wasn't. I don't think it was you. I mean, it was a while ago.
No, yeah. But. So and that was part of Megan, the founder's goal, was to have a space where people could, pick up these products in a non-sexual way and like interact with them in a non-sexual capacity, and get a sense of what these products did, and like without any obligation of buying anything. And also because the sex toy industry is not regulated, a lot of companies get away with making toys out of different products that might not be the most body friendly.
Or you might be allergic to that.
Or, might be allergic to, might not be clear on how to keep clean. And so, and price is not really a good indicator. There can be like really expensive vibrators that are actually not non-porous. So like, it's safe to use, but it could potentially trap bacteria. And so if you're sharing it with multiple partners, that's another avenue of transmitting infection.
That you may
not
know.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had a bunch of body safe products on display for folks to pick up, to like feel the texture, and because some people have preferences for the types of materials that toys are made out of as well. And so it was just an opportunity for folks to engage with the products in a non-sexual environment, because sometimes when you go to an adult boutique, the product's in packaging, and you don't really get a sense of like what the product is like until you purchase it. And then understandably, most of those places don't have a return policy.
Yeah, right.
And so, you've dropped a bunch of money on a product that you're not happy with.
Right.
So.
It's more, when you go to the adult store, it's more in a marketing.
Yeah.
Like how can they market it to you rather than what it really is useful.
And they often, the marketing, well, depending on the store, I guess, but the marketing is often very geared towards cisgender folks, so folks that identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. So when I was born, the doctor looked at me and said, that is a little girl that you have, and as I've grown up, it's fit with my identity. And so it will say like, these vibrators are for women, and it's like, but actually like, men can use vibrators, and so one of the things I really loved about the way that we classified different products was we had we shared alternatives onto how they could be used for different types of bodies, and different types of identities. And there's also other factors that the sex toy industry doesn't really like talk about, like pelvic pain, and other alternative uses, like for folks with limited mobility, and or folks with desensitized sensation. So I really liked that was the way Megan was thinking about things, and that's the way she's since like had trained her staff, and it's kind of had this trickle-down effect.
I love your organization because of this way that you view sex in a very non-judgmental way. It's like, this is something that is natural, and you know, because there's so much shame taught to you, and this is like, we're going to take all that away and just talk about the facts of what's going on, and that's what I
I love, like, I love that the perspective that we kind of tout is we are educating, not endorsing. So, and for some reason, whenever I'm sharing that with folks, my mind always goes to, like, you know, we can talk to you about how to put something in your butt, but you don't have to put something in your butt if you don't want to. And that's I don't know why that's where my mind always goes.
Yeah, but it's
you know, we want people to be given the information to engage in whatever sexual behavior feels good to them, and be knowledgeable of whatever risks are associated with that, so that they can make the most informed decisions about their bodies.
Right. So I heard that you had a toxic masculinity workshop. Can you
non-toxic masculinity?
I'm sorry. That's right. Don't encourage toxic.
Yeah, we want a culture with non-toxic masculinity. Sorry, repeat the question.
Well, I think it could be two questions. What was the workshop like, and maybe you can explain to the viewers what toxic masculinity is, and because I think that's somewhat of a new term that people might not know.
Yeah, so I'll start with that. So toxic masculinity is the notion of masculinity as the predominant default, in that, like, men have to be devoid of emotion. They have to be very macho and kind of assert their dominance over the less masculine people in the room. And so what we're seeing as a culture is that, you know, this is perpetuating violence against women, violence against folks in the LGBTQ community, and it's actually perpetuating violence against other men. It's often the root of, like, bullying for young men, and can be really harmful to pretty much everyone. And so our goal with the program, well, actually, I should take a step back. So we were approached, I want to say in early 2017, by a local activist group that was looking for some form of training on non-toxic masculinity due to some accusations of sexual assault and misogyny within the group. And so they talked with our educators, and they actually ended up putting on a small fundraiser to fund the creation of this program. So it really was like a grassroots community-led effort, which is what I love the most about this program.
Because you weren't putting it out, they were asking you, like, we need this.
Yeah, and we were like, we would love to do this, but we also need to be able to compensate our staff fairly to put the time and energy and resources into creating this curriculum. Because one of our values as an organization is economic justice, and so often sex educators are expected to do the work for free, which, you know, in my ideal world, sex education would be free because people would see it as
education.
As valuable, just the way, you know, math is taught. You know, although we could go on a whole other tangent about how teachers are compensated, but I won't go there. But so. They put on this fundraiser and made it so that we could create this curriculum, and it's a 4-part series. It initially actually started as a 3-part, and then we found through that first iteration that we actually needed to break up. I think it was consent and communication, and sexual health had been combined as one, and then we were like, oh, we need to take a step back, and there's a lot here, and we need to give them their own space. But so the structure of it is we start with emotional labor, understanding what that is, and then the second workshop is consent and communication, and then the third is it's something like masculinity and sexual health, and then the final workshop in the series is allyship and activism. And so, when we're thinking about toxic masculinity, the idea that it is not masculine to seek treatment or to be concerned about your health. And so that's also why we kind of created its own workshop on sexual health specifically, because men often don't talk about their STI status. They don't seek treatment for STIs. I mean, even just in general, if, men are socialized to kind of like shove the emotion down, shove the pain down. And so that also has like effects.
Yeah, that hurts men themselves. Yes.
Yeah, and I can't remember the exact statistic, but it's something like men will break a bone and like wait like a day before going to the hospital because they're like, oh, it's nothing, and that's having a real effect.
Right.
And so the way the program works is it's really like a psychoeducational program.
And you were telling me before that it's only men. That only men went to this.
So it's only men, so people that identify as men. So it's both cisgender men, transgender men, and non-binary masculine aligned individuals. And that's because we want to create a space where men feel comfortable to share and be open. I hope in the future we'll be able to offer either a co-ed or a like version for feminine identifying folks, because we get so many people that are like that identify as female that want to participate in this program, and we just are not there yet.
Well, I could see that, because I really don't think there are a lot of workshops for men. I'm assuming. I don't know that for a fact, but I mean, I think there's a lot more groups for women to help women, but this is really interesting.
Well, and then that goes to the way men are socialized, right? Like, because they're not really socialized to share how they're feeling, because that would make them
to ask for help
for help. Exactly. And that's even true when it comes to like couples counseling. Usually the times, and I don't mean to generalize, but it has been shared with me that most of the time when men attend like a couples intervention, so to speak, it's because like it's either like that or divorce, or that or separation.
Right, so it gets to
the breaking point.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit about Tumblr. Yeah. And I guess a few days ago was the International Day to end violence against sex workers.
Yes. So December 17th is the International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. We had to look up the order of those words earlier. Yes. And so ironically, or maybe unironically, Tumblr recently came out with a ban on adult content, which I don't know if folks know this, but a lot of folks in the queer community, as well as a lot of like teens and young adults, were actually utilizing Tumblr to get sex education. And really, I feel like a lot of our online following initially started through Tumblr. because the platform made it incredibly easy to like reshare information, and so it would just kind of like spiraling, or I guess go viral. And that's really where we started getting our online following. And so the result of the ban is they're taking down all pages that have adult content, and their logic was that they were giving people enough notice to, like, I guess, archive their stuff or to self-remove the content. And the reason that this has come about is because of some legislation that I believe passed earlier this year called Sesta Fosta, and it basically makes platforms responsible for the distribution of adult content. So the platforms are then held liable. So that's why we've seen Craigslist take down the personal section. That's why Backpage no longer exists. And there's also like this conversation about how it's you know, cracking down on sex trafficking, when really it's actually making sex work go further underground and causing more women to be at risk of violence, which is why I say it's ironic that they did that on the International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. But that topic aside, it's also having an impact on our work because it's making it more difficult for us to promote our programs. And so in addition to Tumblr banning pornography, Facebook also announced their, I think it's their sexual solicitation policy. And they, I guess, initially came out with it in October, but it also became more widely talked about on the internet because they made a more formal announcement about it around the same time as Tumblr making their announcement. And we have been seeing the effects of the Facebook solicitation policy specifically because as an organization, we post any of our community events on our Facebook page.
Right, and it has certain words or that fall into...
Yeah, and even just having the name Center for Sexual Pleasure and Health, if you search that in the Facebook search bar, our page does not pop up.
No. Oh, it's probably some...
It's like hidden. So, but kind of going back to the non-toxic masculinity, I was trying to promote the non-toxic masculinity consent and communication workshop. So you can like pay $5 and boost it and it will reach more people in your geographic area, right? So I tried to do that and it was denied under the solicitation policy. And I get it, like most of the time those things are filtered through bots and they're probably looking for specific words. And so, but they do give you an option to submit to a manual review. So it's a human putting their
person,
eyes. And even then it still got denied. So, and it's like, okay, this is not solicitation. It's actually teaching men how to communicate and around consent, like it's actually the very opposite. Like, so it's really, I mean, like, it's really scary to like exist in this world of trying to provide adults with information. And
you were telling me, I think we're one of the only places in the country, or there's a couple places, organizations like yours in San Francisco, or?
Yeah, so there's not many organizations structured the way we're structured. There are other avenues for adult education. I know that a lot of like, retail boutiques will do workshops. We actually used to do a lot of work with Good Vibrations in Brookline, and they would do workshops for the public. But there's no other organizations providing adult-specific sexuality education. Oftentimes, nonprofit organizations are trying to provide sex education to youth.
Oh, which is a different...
Which is completely different. And I mean, necessary, very necessary.
But there's issues with consent and being underage.
Yeah.
And
also, like, our sexuality spans our lifespan. Right. And so the information that I'm looking for as someone, and obviously, as someone in my 60s,
right,
is not the same as someone in their 20s. Like,
and you could be let's say somebody who is disabled or something like how do you deal with that issue? That might be something that just happens to you.
Yeah.
And then where do you go for that?
Yeah.
You know, that's
exactly.
The place.
And that's what we really tried to achieve is providing people with relevant and accurate information that meets their needs. Doctors are upheld as like the people in our culture to talk to about sexuality, except doctors get like very little sex education and are equally uncomfortable talking about sexuality. And so as a result, they also will often like gloss over any like side effects that are pertaining to like your medication, and sexuality. So like antidepressants can have an impact on libido. Cancer, radiation therapy can, chemotherapy is the word I was looking for, can impact the vaginal lining, making it like it can
like drier.
Yeah, and so it will cause pelvic pain, and
people,
so,
they probably didn't tell them.
Yeah,
that.
And so a patient may be embarrassed, so they might not ask about it. Right. They just think that something is wrong with them and that they're broken, and that can be really devastating. And so, we really try to get the information out there so that way people can find it. But then going back to the issues with social media, our stuff gets hidden by the algorithm. So it's this really challenging time that we live in.
Well, we have a few minutes left. Why don't you wrap it up by saying how you got into this position?
So I have been with the organization in various capacities since 2011. I started when I was an intern in college, and I like to say I just basically never left. But when we started, we didn't have a budget. It was all volunteer run. And so for several years, I was a volunteer staff member. And then eventually we were able to like slowly but surely start paying our staff. And I served as the operations manager, I think it was from 2014 to 2015. And then after, in 2015, I moved out of state for a couple of years, but still stayed involved in whatever way I could, mainly as a very small donor. And then my predecessor had to leave the organization because life brought her to another state, and I applied, and here I am, and I've been the executive director since August.
Great.
So
Great.
I'm very excited.
Yeah. You had said to me previously that you had been to a workshop, and that's what kind of inspired you.
Yeah. Our founder, one of our programs is called the Study Sex College Tour, and so it's a nationwide college workshop program where we provide, relevant. Medically accurate, consent-based, pleasure-informed sex education to college students. And our founder came to my university, and I was just enthralled with her. I was like, how do I become this person? And I thought I wanted to be an educator, and it turns out I don't. But I still feel really committed to this work and making sure that people have access to this information.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Awesome.
great
Thank you
talking
for
to you.
having me.
Yeah, I guess we're just supposed to talk now. All right.
Peanut butter, peanut butter.
Yeah.